for a long time, up until about the 70s, the perspectives of people of color just was not regarded as important enough. The history was really told from the dominant society's perspective, and that was the history. And then you say, yeah, but that wasn't our history. That's not how we lived it. That wasn't what my parents had, my grandparents had. And that just kept on being excluded from our history books. I began what has now become VOCES in 1999. It began because it was important to include the Latina and Latino World War II perspective in our country's history. One of our first interviews was with a World War II veteran. His name was Armando Flores. And so he goes in the military during World War II, and they're in Wichita Falls, and it's cold.
And he looked in and got on the platform up there and says, American soldiers stand at attention in a cold day or a hot day. They never keep their hands in their pockets. And man, we all got to attention quick. And funny thing about it, and the reason I remember that is because nobody had ever called me an American until that time. I told these guys that were with me, there was a bunch of guys from South Texas, oh yeah, we were talking in Spanish, oh yeah, did you hear that? He called us American soldiers.
And that says why this is so important. Because that still happens today. So I think that it says something about the place of Latinos and Latinas in our society and why it's vitally important that we include these stories in our narrative. My father, Ramon Rivas, had served in the Army during World War II, and he served in the Aleutian Islands in a place called Dutch Harbor. In 1992, 7 years before I interviewed my father, he and I had taken a trip to Alaska, and we had retraced his steps on Dutch Harbor. And, you know, he showed me all of this, what he had lived through. So flash forward to 1999, and I'm sitting in his living room in San Antonio, and I'm interviewing my father, and I'm asking him specific questions about his experience. And he told me about seeing the Japanese Zeros strafe the island.
I saw him when they dropped the bombs and when they strafing us and the airplanes. We had PBYs there, and I saw everything.
So I go through the entire interview, and the camera turns off, and I turned to him and I said, Daddy, you and I went to Dutch Harbor in 1992. You never told me that you saw the Japanese Zeros strafing the islands. And he said, Mija, you never asked. Some of the things that we started noticing was there were some threads that ran through a lot of the interviews, and one of those was politic and civic engagement. The people that came back have been very active in politics and civic engagement, trying to get better treatment for Latinos. And so as a result, we realized we need to expand beyond just those war periods, and we need to look at some other parts of the Latino experience. So we started looking at political and civic engagement. We added that as a collection. I think it's important for all of us to understand as full a history as we can. And so there are parts of our living experience today that if people understood the history of it, then they would have a deeper appreciation for how far we've come and also for how far we have to go.